Order. The first item on the agenda, we want to acknowledge that the Banastra RCAF 100th anniversary is on Saturday, June the 8th. Doors open at 10 a.m. at the Banastra Church Fellowship Hall for anybody that has time or ability to show up. We would like to acknowledge that the land we stand upon today is the traditional territory of the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, and the Neutral Peoples. And can I get a mover and a seconder for confirmation of the agenda, please? Councillor Deal and Councillor Newell. That the agenda for the regular meeting of council dated June 4th, 2024 be adopted as circulated. All those in favor? Motion carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest from any member of council this evening? Councillor Morrison.
I am a member of the Lions Club that oversees the Leo Club for 11.1.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Can I get a mover and a seconder for the minutes? Moved by Councillor Deal, second by Councillor Chartrand, that the Council of the Municipality of Huron East approve the following council meeting minutes as circulated, and that's the regular meeting of May 21 of 2024. Any comments or questions on those minutes? All those in favor? And motion carries. Under the consent agenda, are there any requests to remove any of the items from the consent agenda? Seeing none, can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Deputy Mayor, second by Councillor Dalton, that the consent agenda items 6.1 to 6.3 be received for information and approved. All those in favor? And motion carries. I have nothing under public meetings, hearings, delegations, planning, or municipal drains. So number 10, reports and recommendations of municipal officers. And I'm not sure who's taking over the first one. CAO.
Yeah, I think it'll be a tag team between myself and Tara Lynn. So, council will be probably aware, I think we let you know earlier that we did apply to the red grant for our branding program, and we were unsuccessful. But we've got other projects, including our wayfinding signage project that we're still hoping to move forward with. That are very dependent upon our branding exercise. So once we were unsuccessful there, Tara Lynn kind of came to me and said, is there another way we can try and figure out how to bring this forward? So working with our treasurer, we looked at some funding that's left over from the modernization fund. That was that first intake we got that was sort of discretionary. You could do what you want with. And so we're proposing that we would fund that project through that so that the rest of the initiatives that Tara Lynn's working on can move forward. So that's the first part. The second part, our human resource coordinator has been working closely with and having lots of conversations with different payroll folks as well as HR folks throughout Huron County, and in particular, actually having good conversations and with Huron County, our Huron County Human Resource Department. And so a lot of conversations were being had. And one of the things that was identified in our service delivery review was to look what's called a human resource information system. And so she did some investigation looking at different types of information systems. A lot of them are very complex, way too complex for a size of a municipality such as us. So she kind of broke it down and said, we'll use HR downloads for the information system management side of it, but she wanted to look at a payroll system, and she had lots of conversations with Huron County. They're using a payroll system. I'm gonna forget the name now. JBS Time Manager. It's sort of more of a digital time management process right now. It's a very painstaking process. Time sheets are hand in, they're manually entered in the system, lots of opportunities for errors, the whole process of making sure the time sheets get in, go through all the signatories. This would sort of create this sort of online platform system. So she asked if she could get approval to move that forward in advance so we could sort of launch it for the new year. Because it's going to take a bit of time to get things set up, do some training, get everybody on board. So we'd also like to fund that, and it's very inexpensive. It's quite surprising. So looking for council support on that as well.
Counselor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, to Brad, the preamble that we had in our agenda said that this program, was in addition to Great Plains.
Yeah, Great Plains are accounting financial system.
Did we get, does Great Plains not offer, apps or whatever to their program?
They don't have a payroll system. This will integrate with Great Plains, but they don't have a payroll system.
Okay, then and I'm not being facetious here, it said that it would save, 4 days a month, I think, in work that the HR lady does.
Yes,
So, can that job be put to a 0.8 or a 0.75 then?
want my honest opinion?
I know what it is gonna be, but I'm asking, can that happen?
No, it can't, because quite frankly, that role is actually been, since we sort of reestablished that role, it's become very valuable, and I think every one of the staff here will attribute to that in terms of the recruitment process, the support systems. Problem we're struggling with right now is that she's a bit overwhelmed. So it's almost too much for that position, so we'd probably bring it back into a comfort zone, to be honest.
How could we go from a part-time person doing it to overwhelmed? I don't understand, please.
Because it was a resource that we probably needed for a long time, because a lot of systems weren't in place.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Oh, Deputy Mayor.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, just to follow up through you to Brad or whoever. So if this is all digital and all done online type thing, is there another set of eyes that actually looks at this to make sure there are no errors that do you have somebody that's fudging some numbers or something like that?
Oh, yeah, for sure, yeah, so it still goes through the approval process, so I'll use Barry's guys, for
Yep.
example, we'll pick on
Yep.
Barry. So Barry guys fill out their sheet, they enter it into the system. It's gonna require that Barry, or person will be a supervisor, sign off on it. So they have to review the actual timesheet, the data that's entered, sign off on it, then it goes to Barry to be signed off before it even goes to the payroll person. So there's multiple checks, which is kind of what we do now.
Right.
It's just, it still replicates that, but digitally now.
Okay. Thank you.
Counselor Chartrand.
Yes, so you explained how you were gonna pay for the branding, option, but you never explained how you're gonna pay for this. Where you finding the money for that?
Same through the modernization.
How much is left in there?
It's about 40,000 sitting in it.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, carry on.
And I think that's it for me, unless there's any other questions.
Okay.
On that one.
Then can I get a mover and a seconder for the motion? Moved by Councillor Newell, second by Councillor Wilby, that the municipality of Huron East support staff's recommendation to proceed with the municipal rebranding, and that the municipality of Huron East council support staff's recommendation to proceed with the acquisition of the JBS time manager, and that the funding for the municipal rebranding and time and attendance software be drawn from the modernization reserve. Any final comments or questions? Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just, the modernization reserve, is that something we got from the province 4 years ago?
Yeah, maybe a bit more than 4 years ago.
Okay, I understand where it's coming from then. Thank you.
All those in favor of the motion? And motion carries. Thank you. Yep.
Good.
Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. So one of the recommendations, or one of the requests council was for staff to bring back an update on the succession plan. And council, bear with me, I might try to kind of go through this in a little bit more detail, particularly for the public that might be watching from home. And so it's almost a year to the date where we actually first started to implement the succession plan, and the primary goal, obviously, why we called it a succession plan, was to establish an organizational structure that gave us that ability to gradually promote people through the system. So we were a very, what I'll call a flat organizational structure. We had frontline staff and then senior staff. There were no sort of middle positions. So we started to create sort of these abilities, and I can see lots of opportunity that's happening already based upon the staff that we got. And we've got lots of people now that can move into those senior management positions as they develop and mature. So I think it's been successful that way. That was, planned and obviously was what we intended right from the get-go. The other part of it, and I've talked to council a little bit about this previously, is about capacity. And it's that we really didn't have operational capacity. So when things kind of were starting, when there's a big issue blows up, or when we're trying to direct something to not a long-term time commitment, but it's sort of a very short-term, immediate time commitment, we just didn't have operational capacity. So things started to fall off the table in terms of tasks being completed. So we have greater operational capacity, and I think we're actually able to be a bit more progressive and proactive in terms of how we're reacting to things. It certainly for sure greatly improved our collaboration and communication amongst all of us. So I'm really proud of the fact of our senior management team and the rest of the staff on the types of conversations and collaboration that's happening. That's probably the greatest success that we've seen out of that succession plan. Everybody's working together, they support each other, they need a little bit of assistance on anything, it's happening, that collaboration's happening. And it's happening because, again, capacity. So each of the staff persons have a little bit of capacity to help the other person when they need help, and vice versa. So I'll go through a few of the things to highlight. Finance, it's very interesting that we have a new process. It's the way the process was always meant to be. But we did taxes in a very hard way, and it probably tied a little bit back into that we had area rate taxes. And so the financial system, Great Plains that we had, isn't really amenable to having area tax rates. So when we kind of moved away from that, we were able to automate the process in terms of how the tax bills were created. Believe it or not, the tax bills will be generated by manually using a whole pile of spreadsheets, calculating all the numbers, and then manually putting those into each tax bill. So you can imagine the time consumption in doing that process. You'd almost finish one tax bill cycle. You'd have to start working on the next one, and you'd be hard pressed to get it done. So that will certainly streamline things and help improve things. And then, of course, the distribution in terms of how those taxes are calculated for county and school board is also being improved. So that's making it a lot easier. It's also more beneficial in terms of how that information gets entered into our Great Plains system, so that when we actually are looking at, we can actually, what's the word I want for it? We can actually distribute out the taxes based upon what all the different revenues. Right now, if you look at our budget, all you see is taxes, one line, big number. We can actually break it now on what sectors it's all coming from, whether it's industrial, commercial, how much is going to education, how much is going to the county. We can break that down a lot better now. Tangible capital assets, there's a lot of work been going on over the course of the last, I think our last update was in 2022 in the asset management plan. So there's a lot of work on the asset management plan, but also on the tangible capital asset piece. And so we're improving on it, which is also helping us be a bit more robust in terms of how we use Great Plains. And it also makes reporting in the provincial report for the financial information return far easier and far better and far more accurate. So that's a great improvement. All of those processes are helping us improve in terms of the year end. Because again, that was a process where multiple spreadsheets being used to try to calculate year-end totals. Since we've got our full staff downstairs in terms of the accounts receivable and utilities, that's improved and we've caught up. And we're able to track things a lot better. And then payables, we've moved to an EFT system, which is electronic fund transfers, been well received by our vendors. And it's actually reduced, we don't use as many checks, so we're reducing paper, we're printing the checks. So a bit of savings there. And the last piece on the financial side is when we move to the new insurance program, we're getting, I can't believe how it's tremendous, the difference in terms of the advice we're getting in terms of being able to be more proactive in terms of risk management. So we're able to take all our agreements, have them reviewed by our insurance broker. They're giving us feedback on how best to draft the language for insurance and indemnification. So it's helping us limit what our risks are. Therefore, that'll eventually lead to reduced insurance premiums. In fact, actually, is it tomorrow? Yeah, tomorrow morning, we're actually having them come in and they're doing a whole session with our senior management and our middle management on risk management techniques. So we're getting sort of a bit of a learn, we're bringing staff in from Intact to actually help us identify some of the ways we can improve risk management. So great that way. In terms of clerk CO office, I try to put these by departments just to make it easier and a bit organized. Communications probably the biggest one that I see as being improvement. So that communication coordinator has been a great opportunity. We've had fairly significant advancement and proactive communication. I hope council sees that in terms of some of the social media posts, in terms of the consistency, the standardization of the content, the tone, the language we're using. But we've had about 17% increase in Facebook, about a 28% increase in Instagram, 267% increase in post frequency, and we've had about a 42% increase in website users. So pretty significant in the last year, just that short period of time, and that's only been not even a year yet that we've had that role in place. You, Mr. Mayor, actually made the comment about in terms of the process of how we've structured council agendas that they're a bit more efficient. We're able to move through that. We can kind of have a bit more of efficient council agendas. We've certainly improved our record management processes. Live streaming a council meeting, a pretty robust system, quite frankly, for what we paid for. It was a low end kind of cost, but it's very robust and very functional for our purposes compared to what I know some municipalities spend tens of thousands trying to put audio video systems in their council chambers. Certainly grants. I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself. I think I'll move on to municipal drains. I think council would agree, our work with municipal drains has greatly improved since we brought that position in-house. Certainly, we're not getting the complaints as much. There's a lot more contact with them. And council's getting regular reporting and updates on the status of the drains. And I think we're hearing that back from the community. Community service. So Lisa's been pretty diligent in terms of working away at some of her various initiatives. We did sit down with the Recreation Advisory Committee to identify some vision and mission statements and some strategic goals that committee wanted to target. And we've been working to implement those and moving fairly aggressively with respect to those goals. We'll probably have to sit down with them again at the end of the year and come up with some new goals because you may have them all completed. But here are some of the success stories of that. So better communications through social media, increase in unified program services in Brussels. We have a summer camp now in Brussels, which we didn't have before. We've got increased Brussels pool hours, as well as increased programming. And we've got, help me, Lisa, I forget the name of it. It's your heart health.
Aquatic rehab.
Aquatic rehab, thank you. So we have an aquatic rehab program as well in Brussels. And that's being sort of, it's not such a siloed system. So actually staff that work at the Van Astra Aquatic Center are going to be supervising some of that work and in fact working up in Brussels. So those two, the expertise is being shared throughout the municipalities. So that's the other aspect of it as well. Certainly a lot of effort towards grant applications. So again, here's the collaborative effort. So rather than each staff person trying to go through the painful process of applying to Canada Summer Jobs Grant, was all coordinated through one person. So Lisa pulled the short straw, I guess, or whatever it might be. But she actually prepared and submitted those applications in the best way, based upon a lot of conversations with the grant program staff to be able to maximize the number of students, the number of applications. That being said, I'm not sure we got a grant.
Those students? Oh, you already did.
Sorry?
I did.
Barry did.
Oh, Barry did?
Got one.
So we got at least one. So, a lot of effort, but staff had the capacity to do that. Also working with for the fitness gym and determining fees, working out an agreement in terms of that, so be able to work out that. I don't know if this is the first time we've done it, but certainly since I've been here, we had a Huron student job fair, which obviously, based on the fact that we were able to retain all the students we have, that was successful. In terms of the daycare, lots of updates and standardization there, improvements and revamps to the parent handbook, and lots of opportunities to work with the county in terms of funding opportunities and maximizing those funding opportunities. We talked about standardization, I talked about the overall pool, better oversight structure of all aquatic services. Enhanced security systems at all our municipal buildings, so we've got that improved and kind of consistently, a lot of old. Security codes based upon people who've been through here a long time ago that we, finally got the system updated and working properly. Public Works, so, digitizing of the patrol records and using GPS tracking. So that now allows us to be able to have records easily retained, stored, time stamped. And again, that helps us again in that risk management. So whenever we get a claim coming into us based upon some type of an event that's happened, motor vehicle collision or whatever it might be, municipality typically gets named as a defendant. But at least now we've got records that will be able to support the fact that we actually did what we did at a specific time. Easier to defend ourselves, less likely that we end up being liable. And then certainly Barry's brought out some new municipal consents and work in the right-of-way permit process to help control and reduce risk on our municipal right-of-ways. Economic development, so we reformatted the Economic Development Committee to include some citizen appointments that now represent the sectors that we actually serve for economic development. We've created print and electronic marketing materials, including the self-guided historical walking tours, trails and visitor attractions and eateries in Huron East. We did that videos, the creation of the Huron East video to promote Huron East both for residents, businesses, employees, and visitor attraction. Partnerships with Huron County to promote our historical walking tours through Driftscape. We're also in the process of rebranding our tourism face page and Huron East Shop and Discover. Creation of the Instagram page for Shop and Discover. Over 11,000 funding obtained towards marketing promotions in 2023. And 39,000 so far in 2024. We've updated our business and community organization directory. Most of these things are all things that were identified in your economic development strategic plan. Quarterly newsletters on an email list. Our CIP has been created and there's been a really strong interest in terms of that program. Creation of both public and private databases for vacant industrial and commercial properties. That was another key point in our economic development strategic plan. Logo developments for Brussels, Seaforth and Banastra, and regular attendance at what's called now the Seaforth and Area Community Network and Brussels Community Alliance meetings. So they happen on a regular basis through the library in a combination with them and key local people that provide sort of input. Terry Lynn might be able to speak better on that. Building and planning services, we now have the in-house ability to complete title searches. Previously, we would do those through our solicitor, obviously at a higher cost and obviously at a longer time span. So we're able to do that in-house now. We've gone to cloud permit through the county for our planning applications, and we're potentially looking at that for our building permit applications as well. But that's become well received and certainly a lot easier for us to track all the planning applications. Fairly rapid processing and review of all permit applications. I've heard many people come to the front counter shocked or commending on how quickly their permit was turned around. So not that I heard complaints in the past, but there's more of that, that sort of comment that, boy, that was pretty quick. I dropped it off yesterday. I got my permit already. Fire, certainly, maybe no direct resources allocated to fire through the succession plan, but certainly the fact that we had the succession plan in place gave me a greater capability to be able to allocate my time and to deal with some of the various things that are going on in the fire service at a very critical stage. So that certainly was supportive. In terms of HR, lots has happened here. We've recruited 14 students, 8 firefighters, 1 facility operator, 1 water and sewer operator, 1 heavy equipment operator, 1 financial analyst, 1 registered early childhood educator. We've streamlined our process. We've actually standardized the process. We've included various components to those recruitment process to make them a bit more sophisticated and thorough. We actually had a creation of a student onboarding day. So instead of students coming in and onboarding them sort of sporadically, we had one specific day where students came in, we did all the training, we did all the background, the onboarding. We've got our joint health and safety committee back up and running. And we're working through certificate process with some of the new employees that have joined. We got certainly more support for our supervisors and managers. Better management of vacation, sick and overtime balances. That was one piece that was lacking in the past, so we've got a better hold on that and tracking system in place for that. Monthly remittance are on time. Owners reporting's on time, flexible work arrangements and that were all worked out fairly efficiently and effectively, based upon our new work strategies. Culture management employees off work for medical purposes. So when an employee goes on long-term disability, we've got a better network there to track that process and try to get the employee back to work as soon as possible, which in turn reduces our premiums for our benefits. And then rolling out performance appraisals for department heads and standardizing them. So, the great part is we've accomplished a lot in a year. Kudos to all the staff and all the efforts they've done. What we will recommend from a communication strategy is that it comes right out of our strategic plan where we talked about recognizing and rewarding hard work and excellence among employers, as well as department head highlights. So we're going to be trying to push some of this positive stories out through social media, spread out sporadically over the course of the next few months. That's it for me, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah, thank you. Questions on the report? Okay, seeing none. That was just for information, so I don't need a motion. So the next thing is the council remuneration and green fund donations.
This was a report requested from council as a result of some recent conversations and as well as a decision that was made a year or so ago with the green donations. So this is just seeking council's direction. I know there's been some conversations about potentially freezing the CPI increases over the rest of the term, if that's going to be potential savings. Council is also interested in seeing exactly what was spent with council remuneration over the last year, so that was included in the report. So kind of a forecast what the rest of the year will bring, as much as we could kind of determine that based on what we know what meetings are coming up, so. It's basically if council wants to take any action with council remuneration at this point.
Any comments from council members? Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think or would propose that we freeze CPI for council meetings and committee meetings till the end of this term. Leave the stipend or whatever you call it tied to CPI. And increase the convention and whatever you want to call it to 6,000 over 2 years, because the cost of all of these have gone up considerably, I think, since we set the 5,000 limit. That's what I would propose. Then we will talk about council membership, etc. a bit later, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Deputy Mayor?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, I know I originally had brought it up about freezing councils, meeting rates and our honorarium as well for the rest of this term. I think we as council, we have to recognize that there's a lot of costs that went up on everybody, and our taxes that went up a lot as well. I don't think we're spending money foolishly, but it's just our way. It's a small way of us recognizing and something that we can do. We're just recognizing that costs are going up with everybody. I think it's a small thing that we could do that the general public could see that we're at least concerned about it and more than willing. I feel that we get paid well for what we do. Our meetings, especially mileage, and our honorariums as well. So I had originally thought I would like to propose it for all them three things. But I'll put it out there for discussion as well.
I'll comment a couple of things. The mileage, I do believe that's set by Revenue Kin, is it? Yes. So that's not something that you should be toying with. Now, at one time, it used to be if you paid less or you paid more, you got taxed on it. But if you only what they told you to charge, you didn't get taxed on it, which didn't make any sense to me. I think they've changed that rule a little bit, that you can underpay now and don't get taxed on it, but I'm not 100% sure on that. But I think I've been told that they did change that rule. I guess my only concern is this: 99% of the public aren't even gonna know that you did anything, which is unfortunately not going to really weigh anything on them at all. And if you do it, then at the end of the term, what you should do is a proper increase for the next term, which is the way we used to do it. And then it used to be a $300 or $400 increase, and it looked outrageous when you did it all at one time. I won't be here for the next term anyway, so if you're gonna give that, that's fine. I'm not gonna have to deal with it, but I don't think it's the way to do it. And I thought the strategy behind doing it as the CPI was the most appropriate way, because then it didn't look like we were doing anything other than just what the normal cost index was going up. I understand the rationale about the fact that it's nice to try and keep the prices down. But when you're asking 11 people to try and make the difference on a $14 million budget, it's just, to me, it's not a practical way to approach it. I don't know what other comments there are right there. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Councillor, or Deputy Mayor McClellan and I had almost the exact same comments that you just made. We still felt that committee meetings and council meetings were very well paid for the amount of time spent. Our proposal was to stop increases for this term, and then next term, council could review going back to putting CPI on. There wouldn't be any huge lump sum increase. It would not be counted or used or whatever. It would just go back to, wasn't that what we discussed, Councilor, our Deputy Mayor?
Yeah,
That in 26, the next council would decide whether to go back to CPI or hold or whatever.
yeah, and by all means, we're not gonna balance the budget by doing this. No, we're not, and that's not the idea, but it's just, we can take a step and do something like that. The next council can do what they wish as well. So, it's not a burden on the next council. They can either keep things the same or put it up or whatever. It's just this council that we're looking at right now.
Like, I'm not gonna fight it either way. To me, it doesn't make not much difference to myself, but I'm concerned that you get down a rabbit hole, as in, I know that when we ended up giving, it was about 11% increase almost across the board when we did our pay equity. And I know, Councillor Fisher, you commented about the fact that you were upset that we had fallen so far behind that we had to do that. And quite often when we do, we'll get someone to do a survey to find out what other municipalities are doing and figuring out what is going on. If you end up that you're into next term and you do that and you find out you're way behind, and then all of a sudden you're giving, a 5% increase or a 10% increase because you didn't give 3% for like 2 or 3 years in a row. It's easy to shake your head, Bob, but the bottom line is the next council gets to look at those figures, and if they say we're underpaid compared to everybody else, then it's not inappropriate for them to bring themselves up to the proper level, but it looks bad on council when you do it as a one lump sum. That's my comment. I like the fact that it's little steps. I think that's more palatable, and I think that's why we do multi-year budgets, to try and end up down the road with a level playing field, so that we're always dealing with, those 3% type increases, and not end up with years again in the future where we're gonna have maybe a couple of years we squeak by at 2 and we look really good, but then we end up with a 1 at 10 and we look terrible. Are we gonna end up doing the same thing? That's my concern. Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I see where you're coming from going to, Mr. Mayor, but I would hope that counselors in the future would be prudent. I take a committee meeting at, was it $90? That works out to about $45 an hour pay. I think that's, we're more than well paid, and council meetings, I don't know what my fellow counselors feel, but 180, I don't think we spend more than 6 hours preparing and attending the meetings. That's $30 an hour. That's me, we're well paid on our committee and council meetings. The honorarium, I have found the last couple of years, there's more and more constituents who avail themselves of the counselors, pro and con, mainly con, so I can see that being increased, but anyway, that's my thoughts. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
I only have one quick response. Jim Finch, who used to be the manager of the credit union in Clinton, and he was the director for the economic development department for the board, as a public member appointed to the position. And he had a very common comment whenever we were working on strategy, and he said, hope is not a strategy. And if you're counting on hope, it's not very good.
I would say astute, then. My future counselors will be very astute, Mr. Mayor.
Councillor Deal.
Thank you. Just a question, the committee meetings, will that lock, those in the public that sit on the boards, that locks them down to them?
Yes.
Thank you.
This is the open for discussion.
Anytime.
Either we have a discussion or we have a vote, so I'm not sure where council wants to be here. Go ahead, Deputy Mayor.
Can I make a motion then? And
Absolutely.
So I would make a motion that we freeze council's honoraries and pay for the remainder of our term.
Do I have a seconder for that motion? Councillor McGrath? Okay. Do I have any more comments or questions before I call the vote? All those in favor of the vote as it was read? And opposed? And the motion's defeated. Is there another option? I appreciate the fact that we would like to send a signal to the public that we are trying to be frugal with money that they give us. Is there another way to do something that is more across the board? But I don't have a suggestion at this point. Councilor McGrath?
Is there a reason that we meet twice a month sometimes? Because sometimes we come this for an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we're gone. So add the cost of that meeting up for 2 hours. I mean, it might take me more hours sitting at the next meeting, but if at least twice, then your $30 an hour goes down to 10 and you'll feel better. But that's one way of, because I've walked and saw it in the past where, you know, we go and that unless it's an urgent matter that has to be done. Sometimes we see we don't accomplish much, and read a report or stuff like that, so.
I'm gonna give you two comments. One,
Well, go ahead.
I think our meetings are shorter because I think staff have done a lot more work and made it a lot easier by the time it gets to us. That we're really, in most cases, just dealing with the information and policy, which is technically what the role of council is supposed to be. I don't have a problem with once a month, other than the fact that I think sometimes there are time sensitive things that get scheduled for the every second week, where we do planning one week and we do other things another week. But I'm gonna need staff to respond to that, because my understanding is that you kind of had to almost show up every 2 weeks just to keep the flow of everything going for the office, unless we could change something else. And I can't answer that question, so I need to turn to staff and ask if that's a reasonable thing, or is there an even in between?
I'm gonna look at sort of the faces down at the end of the table to see whether that's something that they think they could work with. I think if we kind of got used to it, I mean, we're all kind of used to it from a staff perspective of the cycle. So we kind of work through when we do reports. Barry, you think you're okay? I mean, tenders are your big time crunch issue. That would be the sensitive piece.
I kind of agree with the flow of council, being able to keep time sensitive things on the go. Not only that, like, it's a big part of it. Planning is very time sensitive, and you guys do a lot of planning, but for me, trying to fit in a month away and I close a tender at the wrong time, or it gets a little time sensitive, drainage, reports, and farmers are waiting for drainage for 2 years and wait another 2 weeks, it's like pulling that teeth. And so I believe it's time sensitive and keeps the flow going for staff.
Go ahead, Carolyn.
I was gonna say too, just another example, often, if we're applying to grants, the period to actually apply is only a month. So by the time I learn, a grant application, or Lisa learns of a grant application, we have to have time to develop a plan and get it approved by council and have it submitted within that. So if we only have a monthly council meeting, it's gonna make that very difficult.
Is there a way to coordinate? And I know it's hard to nail a meeting down to a certain time frame, but since there's 2 meetings a month, if there are other committee meetings that it's mostly council members that are on, is there a way to coordinate them with the council meeting night? I would suggest it always be before the council meeting so that the council meeting doesn't go a lot later, which then we could kind of tie the whole thing down into technically calling it one meeting. And we've done stuff like that in the past. We don't do it a lot, but we have done it where we've come in at 4 o'clock, had a meeting about something, and then started the council meeting at 6 or whatever. Which certainly does help from the finance point.
It works for those council only type committees, but for the public committees, it doesn't.
Okay.
As with public members.
Councilor McGrath?
I'm not saying once a month.
Oh,
What I'm saying is, we come to a meeting, so when you're looking at the minutes, whatever's on the minutes for this particular, coming up 2 weeks isn't critical. You put that meeting on for a week, so you have maybe one that month, but the next 2 or 3 months might be every 2 weeks. I'm just saying in the fact of not every time you have to be on the cycle. So when you look at your minutes, if nothing is critical on this meeting, as an example, I couldn't wait for another 2 weeks. Okay, we might have one meeting this month. But next month, you might have a meeting every 2 weeks because the sensitive stuff has to be done on time. That's all I'm saying. I didn't say once a month.
okay, I appreciate the clarification because I thought that's what you
I
meant.
wasn't saying once a month.
I'll let the CAO respond and then I'll go to Councilor Sharkey.
I just have an idea based upon Councilman Brass, is that. I'll throw this out, you guys can play around with whatever you want. So what if we kept sort of a schedule that one meeting is firm, so we'll have a meeting per month that's always firm. The alternate Tuesday is just kept as sort of in reserve. So unless there's something time sensitive, whether it's a tender, whether it's a grant application, we won't necessarily meet unless there's something time sensitive, but every council member has to keep that time slot open. So it's sort of we'll have it if we need it, but if we don't need it, we don't have it. That's an alternative. I think that satisfies the issues I heard from a staff perspective. And it might satisfy Councilor McGrath's point that maybe we don't need to meet every month, twice a month.
Councilor Chartrand?
And to your point, we could have like our sewer and water meeting or our personnel meeting or our administration meeting. Those ones we could hold before the council meeting, and that would be part of one meeting instead of paying for 2 meetings, right? So we could easily do that. Easily.
Yeah, because I the odd time, Barry, we run into a good discussion, but in most cases, we can do a water and sewer meeting in an hour. They're pretty straightforward.
Hour and a half if everything's there, that's right.
Yeah, so you're saving that way. For every one of those committee meetings, you're not paying.
Yes. Oh, you gotta modify a policy?
Sorry, I'm just thinking, the way the policy is written as now, you would still be classified that as attending a committee meeting, regardless if it was on the same day. It would still be, you get paid to go in council 2 hours later, and you're getting paid to go to committee 2 hours prior, so it's not really squashing that attendance portion. I mean, amending the policy is needed anyway. This is gonna come back in the future as an overall how we approach our honorariums, what we get paid, and not exactly what we get paid, but how we approach it. And maybe those length of meeting timeframes can be approached. A lot of people maybe do less, like 2 hour meetings is a less approach or less money. Up to 4 hours is such and such, and up to 8 hours is such and such. Whereas now we look at council as this is, no matter how many hours you're in council, that's your pay. No matter how many hours you're in a committee meeting, that's your pay. So I think even if you run it on the same day, which we do a lot to save travel, and you're maybe saving your mileage because you're staying at the building, but your attendance rate would still be applied.
I hope we can adjust that because I go to 2 meetings in the same day in Goderich and I get paid for one.
Exactly, everybody's
And I'm
written
fine
a
with
little
it, yeah.
differently, right? And that's where I've noticed, I've been looking at this for a while since I've come into this position of. There are some grayness that you're reading and interpreting that needs to be cleaned up so that we're all on the same page and it's clearly defined. If you're attending for one day, fine, you get a payment for attending that day. Doesn't matter if it's committee meeting, doesn't matter if it's council. We have it very broken up by
Okay.
committee, council, and then we have the additional events of under 4 and over 4 hours. So that adds the extra layer on that too, right?
But it's really just some logistics of.
It's
fixing the
logistics
bylaw.
and cleaning up the policy, yes.
Yeah.
It's not undoable.
No,
It's
it-
okay. Revise our policy.
Go
Look
ahead.
how many times we've had, closed session meetings at 4 or 4:30 or 5:30 before council. You know, and we only put in for one meeting.
But I think that's still
It's a
considered
council meeting.
It's
council
still considered, but I guess the point is we started at, say, 4:30.
same time, yeah.
Mhm.
You can still do that for your sewer and water meeting or your committee meeting or whatever, so we're here the same amount of time, but you're covering 2
Yeah, and
topics.
it's just a matter of cleaning up our policy, which is.
That would make total sense.
Mhm.
Counselor Deal.
Thank you. I've got a couple of things. So would you go to more of an hourly rate then on the meetings?
There's a lot of different approaches and maybe it is an hourly, but some of them do it. No matter what type of meeting, if you're at a meeting for 2 hours, that's your rate. If you're at a meeting for 4, that's your rate.
Right.
Over 4, that's your rate. So it's not looking at. Per se, it's. You could attend 5 meetings here today and you would get paid that 5 hour, so 4 to 6 hours, whatever, like there's. Different scenarios to make that work.
Right. And do we not have to have a schedule for the public, like a
Yes.
yearly schedule? So how would we do that if we decided, oh, there's not much to talk about, you know,
Right.
the end of June? How do you work around the public then that may want to or need to come out?
There would have to be some clear timelines of when you would make that determination that a meeting would have been canceled. So say it's the first, or maybe just for logistics, it's the 2nd and 4th Tuesdays instead of 1st and 3rd, and the 4th is negotiable. There'd have to be a clear indication on our communication timelines of, we know this date that we're gonna be canceling that meeting, and then we have time to inform the public.
I'd do it the other way around. I'd say that's the meeting. That's what we had scheduled. Other than that, if we schedule a second meeting for whatever reason, it's just a notice that we put out that we're having a second meeting.
So you're saying not scheduling the
Not
second meeting?
schedule a second meeting, just simply say you got 1 meeting per month.
Yeah,
Target it for that 1 meeting. And then if we have to have a second meeting because something's time sensitive, we target it to be that 3rd Tuesday of the month or whatever.
Or there's a delegation that's requested?
Yeah, but we usually try to target them towards the first meeting, the regular meeting, and then it would be more things that are time sensitive. Maybe it is a delegation coming because something is time sensitive. or it might be a staff request, or it might be a governmental request that's requiring some input from you as council on a timeline that's not. Because when, there's a lot of times we get requests from the government that are, get it back to us in 2 weeks and we just met, right? And it's hard enough for me to work 2 meetings, but kind of just kept it as the public face is just basically there's 1 meeting per month. We meet 12 times a year and then follow our notice provision in terms of any other meetings. What I want to make sure is that council keeps that second or third, whatever, second Tuesday free so that if we did call a meeting, you're all available. You don't start scheduling yourself to do other activities.
I certainly like that a lot better from the public's perspective, because council then has a set meeting. If council has an extra meeting, then council had something to deal with. But if it's out there that, we cancel this meeting and then we cancel this meeting and then we cancel this meeting, I don't think it looks as good to the general public if we start doing things like that. Councillor Morrison's next.
Yeah, I don't want to jump the conversation, but like from my perspective, I guess to the clerk and more a question for this policy that you've been at least wanted to look at. Was it something on your plate to actually do in, say, the next 6 months or something along those lines?
Well, for
Like, is
one,
it an
it's,
immediate policy or just
it's
something? that's been-
legislated that we have to do it before the next election, and so rightfully it should be by the end of this year, which is in that 6-month time frame, right? It's been something I've been actively working on. It's just polling different municipalities to make sure that I'm getting the different scenarios together as well. So it is definitely one of the higher priorities on the list, because there is a lot of cleanup to do with it.
Okay, my personal preference, just for the report at hand, is I would be okay to make a motion when it gets to it, that we keep the remuneration as status quo for this year. And then we direct staff to either do that policy or to bring back all the various options we've talked about, whether it's the hourly pay or whether it's canceling the second meeting. And then bring us back that on a nice one sheet, and we can kind of have that further discussion when everything's in front of us. But just, I'm prepared at whenever it comes. I would say we remain status quo, as long as I would say we have this in place before next year. And then we can be able to make changes.
So you'd like to see a report by the
Yeah.
end of 2024 to be implemented by 20.
Yeah, whether that's a change in the remuneration, whether that's change in the meetings we do, whether that's a change in, if it's just, we get paid per meeting or paid per hourly, just staff discuss it, bring us back the full report on everything that we've talked about. And like, I'd be more comfortable going forward with an option like that, because we're just spitting a lot of ideas out, and I don't know where it's gonna lead, but I'd like to kind of at least see everything, and then maybe a stack kind of pro and con. We're talking to department heads, which options maybe work better for them as well, because that's a big consideration.
And that's definitely doable before the 2025 scheduled meeting comes out too, so those could align.
Next, I'm gonna have Councillor Chartrand, then Councillor Newell. I did want to comment one thing on what Councillor Deal said. And I'd want to hear back from staff about what would be a recommendation. My only concern, if we do an hourly rate, if you base the rate only on the time that you're sitting in the chair here in the room, how do you compensate for the time that you do when you're either dealing with the public or doing your notes or your minutes and everything else? And does that make it look like, and if you compensate for all of that, does that make the hourly rate look outrageous when people don't maybe understand what other work or things that you do on the sideline? So I'm just making it as a comment to be considered if we look at it that way. Councillor Chartrand.
After listening to all this, my opinion is I would just leave things the way they are to the end of this council and get all this new information ready for the next council. And I go back to the original motion. There's so much policy change here and so many different ideas. Why not we just keep everything the way it is and not change meeting schedules and freeze our wages for the balances, seems to be the easiest solution rather than trying to change everything for the balance of this term. Anyways, we've only got, what, a year and a half left, 24 and 25, and then the elections in 26, right?
So a little over 2 years, 2.5.
2.5. That's my recommendation.
Councillor Newell.
I don't know if this is a can of worms I'm opening or not, but maybe through Jessica, do you know in other municipalities, do they have just a counselor wage?
Yeah.
As opposed to broken down by meetings and stuff like that? Is that an easier number just to take that number and play with that number? And I don't know if you would take an average of what they make, but if you go to a RAC meeting, you don't indicate that on a timesheet. You just get your monthly stipend the way we get our twice a year stipend or something like that. So just something maybe to consider, but
I have asked,
Sorry.
I have asked other councils how they do it. Unfortunately, it was probably more than a decade ago that I asked the question, and the answer may have been more valid then than I think it is now. I know at one time, I don't know if it's still this way or not, the mayor of Goddard used to get a lump sum. And it was back then, it was a pretty hefty paycheck, but never got paid for any meetings. If he went to a meeting every single day for the whole year, didn't matter, he had his lump sum. He also had unlimited expenses to go to conferences year round. So that was a different thing again. And like, everybody has done it differently. Some people have said, well, based on the number of constituents that you're representing, that should be part of the calculation. And in fairness, I'm gonna say, you know, you go back 20 years ago, people probably called their representatives a lot more often than they do now. And so maybe there was some merit to that, but things have changed over the years. And I don't know if you can use any of those old calculations. So in fairness, I can't answer the question, and it'd be up to staff to try and figure out what the heck everybody else does, because I don't know anymore. I really don't have the answer. I have asked that question in the past, and I got such a range of answers. It was unbelievable.
can of worms thing.
Oh, yeah, it was.
It's all.
Yeah,
There are municipalities out there that pay a flat rate, doesn't matter how many meetings you attend. There's municipalities out there that pay a flat rate for what's scheduled. On your scheduled meetings, if there's any extra meetings, and that gets paid as an extra. But yeah, it's all over the map.
Like, I'm chair of the Board of Health, and, so we've got, St. Mary's, Stratford, members from, the county of Perth and members from the county of Huron all sit on there. And our stipends, there's absolutely no comparison. We get paid our county rate for our meetings. The people from St. Mary's get $45. Like, it's, but apparently their overall, what is the remuneration for the year? It's a huge amount.
Right.
So they get a huge remuneration literally just for holding the position. But they only get paid a little tiny bit for each meeting they go to. It's just the way they do it. Councillor Fisher.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I frequently ask at AMO and Roma, how much do you get just to get conversation going? And there are several that I've talked to that get a flat rate. And it is significant. There was one this year I talked to that gets, now it was Wellington County, I think. 43,000. For one, like a regional counselor. And he ran for that position. He didn't have to be a municipal counselor first, but he got 43,000 for 4 meetings a month. And I think South Huron pays a flat rate. For their counselors.
A lot less than our 12,000 we got.
Yeah.
I think it's a lot more than our, we get, to be honest.
These scenarios would be a part of what I would be putting in a report, and it's already some research that I have been starting to do. It started also with the council composition advisory review. We did a lot of that gathering of information. At this point, it's looking to see if anything's changed, if anybody's redone their bylaws, especially just for our local areas. But even at that point, it was known, like, it does vary. Even across our local municipalities, it's different, but that information can be and will be provided in a written report for you guys as well.
Go to the deputy mayor.
My motion was just a gesture, all it was. All it was, so.
Okay.
You know, we weren't gonna balance the budget, like I said, or anything like that. It was just a gesture that we could show the general public that council was aware of expenses rising and the small thing that we could do.
I still do like the idea, and I sit on all three of them, whether it's personnel, whether it's, the water and sewer or the,
Administration.
administration. If we could hold those prior to a council meeting, and I'm sorry, but you just get paid for the council meeting,
Yeah.
I have absolutely no problem
I'm
with
good
that.
with that too.
Counselor Fisher, you had
Yeah,
another
thank you,
question?
Mr. Just a quick comment, a good discussion that we started, Deputy Mayor. I agree with Councilor Chartron that we maintain the 2 meetings the rest of this term and, freeze the remuneration, for the council and, committee meetings.
For re-looking at that motion, we would have to do a reconsideration as that motion has already been defeated. So
Yeah,
you guys will have to have a vote to reconsider
So,
this.
okay, the money part I'll drop then, but I agree with Councilor Chartron then to maintain the meetings as they, council meetings as they are for the rest of the term.
Okay.
I don't,
Okay, so we don't need an motion for that to carry on, but do we want to leave, direction for staff then that we'd like to have something brought back before the end of the year to give serious consideration for the 25 and 26 years of council?
As per
as I
Justin
have
said.
said.
Yeah, okay,
I'll make that.
okay, Justin's made that. Brenda?
I was just gonna comment, what Councilor Chartran saying, would it entice more people to be interested if they thought they could have 2 meetings in one night rather than, so many meetings, because that's kind of, there's a lot of meetings. And some people will say, that's a big commitment, so maybe that's something I could consider too. If you could combine them. You see one night instead of 3.
Larry?
I like that idea for the simple fact that it doesn't screw up. You're there, it's Tuesday, you're in, you're out, you're on, and that makes total sense. Sorry, I mentioned maybe skipping the meeting.
Sorry, we got it all out on the table. We know where we stand. Do I have a seconder for, Counselor Morrison's motion? Okay, moved by, second by Counselor Deal. All those in favor? And motion carries. Thank you. So staff have their direction?
That's correct.
Good.
On to another maybe less controversial, hopefully. The flag policy, this is just a standard flag policy to recognize when we do lower flags. There are a few events throughout that are designated by Ontario Heritage that we should be lowering the flag for, so this just gets it in paper. It sets out our communication to ensure that we are going to lower it, let the residents know why the flag is lowered. I did do a quick poll through our community engagement just on a community flag poll, only because this is very common in municipalities where you could have requests to raise a community flag. For instance, the pride flag that we do in June. There's also some other events that might come up that somebody would want to fly a flag, Indigenous flag, things like that would come up. The residents said, I think it was like 63% said that they didn't find it necessary. I would point out, though, we do have some poles already in place, like Brussels that has the Optimist flag. That's not what I was trying to get at in here. We're not going to ask anybody to be taking down a flag. This is just setting a standard for basically the Canadian flag that we have at these locations. The listing at the end of the policy was just that we know where we have these flags, so that we can ensure the same protocols being put across to all the different sites where we do have a flag.
Comments or questions? Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Wilby, second by Deputy Mayor, that the Council of the Municipality of Huron East adopt the flag policy. All those in favor? And motion carries. The Kelly Pit lease agreement. I only had one question and Barry's already answered mine. Can I get a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Deal, second by Councillor Chartran. Any questions for Barry on this? Any comments, Barry, other than this is just carrying on business as usual, basically?
We've had a good relationship with Kelly's over since 2000, and we've extracted a lot of gravel out of the pit. We've licensed the pit to low water extraction, which is a new venture for us. but there's still savings in gravel. It's gravel is a commodity and we realize the price is never gonna go down on that. So every time we utilize gravel from the Kelly pit, we save about $2 to $3 based on all the operations cost and on 30,000 tons a year. You can do the math on that. But you don't realize that savings because it's not an actual revenue coming in.
You're right.
$2 to $3.
Yes. Yeah.
For gravel.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, through you to Barry. Barry, after the 8 years, do you suppose there's gonna be much gravel left there? And I don't know if you know or not, or, you know, the engineer's report's probably on it.
Yeah, the engineer report does dictate the, around 40,000 tons. Now, the 8 years might be a little aggressive, at a 30,000 ton taking. Because when we utilize, if you look at the map and the area that we have to deal with, there's gonna be some managing that has to be done to hopefully get the 400,000 tons.
Now, based on the question from the deputy mayor, that if you started to run shy of gravel that you could actually get out of there, the fact that you've got 24 months written notice doesn't really matter. You're paying by the ton anyways of what actually comes out. If you don't take it, you don't take it.
That's right.
Yeah, okay. Deputy mayor?
And through you again to Barry. So, and you have room on that site to store this, right?
Well, that's gonna be the managing part. Where you drag about 60,000 tons, what that
Yes.
foam still look like, crush 30,000 of it in a given year. You wouldn't call the drag line back until you're gonna drag line another 60,000.
Right.
Look at the room you've got and see how you can manage that. I think it's gonna be an ongoing process.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All those in favor of the motion? And motion carries. Thank you.
Excuse me, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, go ahead.
I just wanted to just jump back for a second, the flag policy. How long does a flag, like if it was like a community group, how long does that, is there a time limit on that?
It's
Said that-
usually by request. When I was looking at some area municipalities, they'd say a maximum up to a week. But for instance, the pride flag requests the whole month of June, so that comes to council every year when that comes up and you guys approve it for the whole month of June. But I would say standard would be about a week, or sometimes it's for the length of an event, if they have an event coming.
Okay, thank you, sorry about that.
No, not a problem. Roadside grass cutting. This one, other than if you wanted to talk about the fields getting awful close to your roadway.
Yeah, I think the report is, pretty self-explanatory. The highlights of it basically come back to the pictures on the second page. That's what we'll probably run into, and it, no doubt, within the policy, create a little distress. If we're implement it, but you can see by the pictures, this is starting to be a little bit more than just encroaching. I don't anticipate the policy for us to go out and mandate that somebody's into the road allowance a little bit, that we would, go out and, hey, strict rules, you gotta be here, right there. Only when it's intrusive, I would say that we would notify them under the communications portion on how we would notify them. Obviously, you have corner site restrictions, so we've worked with others in the past on that. I think this is just laying it out because we're starting into the grass, the cutting season. That when you get a complaint, it kind of, you understand what's going on in the field, and if there's something that you need to bring to my attention, that might be just a little bit stepping over the bounds, please do. I think you find it pretty reasonable.
Barry, there was a couple of thoughts I had when I read the report and saw the picture. So first, when I saw that the farmer was almost right up to the gravel, I thought, hey, great, we don't have to cut the grass there. But then I realized, if he's starting to move soil close to the edge of your roadway and maybe start to deteriorate the edge of the roadway, that it could be costing you a lot more money. And I certainly understood the comments about if the snowplow gets off a little bit, it's you really don't have firm ground there anymore because it gets tilled up every year. But when you started your comments, I was a little concerned about that if certain ones become a problem or other ones, but it didn't sound like you were talking about the actual distance. And I'm gonna have a problem if we're not consistent with all landowners certain distance from the center of the roadway. Because I don't want to say, well, we're letting him do it because it works out okay for us, but no, you can't do it. We need to be real consistent with whatever policy we're gonna have.
And I think that's where we kind of tried to lay the line out with 14-foot cut. That's been always our grass cutting policy right from. I can't, for as long as I can remember, was the 14-foot mark. Now, we can drive some of those roads and those grasses are already cut from one end of the field to the other end of the field and down that road where you can just go on, and the next one, you may only get 7 feet of a cut. Simply because of the safety of the tractor and the angle of the ditch. But something like this, you're 100% correct. It creates a little bit of a snowplow issue, but it's more so that now I see that it's burnt off that grass, so that's going to turn to mud or dirt. And it could start affecting the road's edge, which is the gravel portion or the travel portion of the road as well. So this is quite excessive, and I think we're trying to push back a little bit. I hate to go back to the old days where you start planting trees right along the property line to push them back. I think those days are gone. I think we have to work with people a little bit more. And maybe the communication of what's expected.
Deputy Mayor, Mr. Mayor, Barry, does that also include livestock? David?
Yeah, it should be. You pointed to a couple of different things there. You can look at the risk management, is that a high risk, low risk, medium risk, where it is, and analyze it from that basis, but technically. There's 66-foot width of road there that you shouldn't really be in. Right, right. And headlands, it can go on to a lot of other things too.
Yes, yeah. And if I may, just a quick follow, 2 cuts a year, Barry, or just 1?
2.
2. So like end of June and then the September, is that it? I didn't see that
Starting
in
right
here.
now. We're starting right now, but that's part of the old tender process.
Right,
Was 2 cuts a year, 1 in June, and I do believe the start of September.
okay, yeah, I didn't see it in the policy, but I didn't know if it need to be or not, but I just wanted to. Just sort of, that's what you go by, so.
To tag onto that, Barry, I know that was one thing that we always had as a concern in the past is that when we were getting someone else to do it. We also had to work around whatever work schedule they may have had for other municipalities and that. Are there certain timeframes that would really benefit the municipality in doing the first and second cut that makes it better for us?
Well, right now, we could have gotten out maybe a few days earlier because things are progressing pretty good now because things are already going to seed. And once you get to a certain seed and some of the wild sugar bowl and stuff like that, you're too late. So we did get a little bit of it, but not a lot of it. We can get maybe 4 hours. So tomorrow's going to be the first day that we really get into our program to see how it works, and hopefully, I hope for a successful venture in this roadside grass mowing.
Councillor Deal.
Just a note to you, the corner of McNabb and Brandon. If you were southbound, as I come up to the corner the other night, because I've had a couple of comments, that hill that goes down towards Ethel, you can't see anything coming out of that
Because of
little
grass.
swell, and I was in the truck, a car with one of those, luggage carriers or whatever, come up out of there. I never seen it at all.
Because of the grass
Yeah,
growing up, so.
It's
Well,
growing.
hopefully we get at it. It has, May's been kind of wet and hot and it's been growing fast, so.
Oh, yeah,
And I can guarantee you, everybody will be behind it for a while, and once you get into midsummer, everything slows down a little bit.
Can I have a mover and a seconder, please? Moved by Councillor Fisher, second by Councillor Deal, that the council of the municipality of Huron East support the roadside grass cutting policy. All those in favor? That motion carries. Correspondence, council's Leo Club re-drinking fountain proposal. Can I get a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Chartrand, second by Deputy Mayor, that the council of the municipality of Huron East support the installation of the Lions Drinking Foundation at the Brussels Library. I just have one question. Barry, I didn't see a time frame. Well, yeah, it said either fall or spring. Something like that.
Yeah, it'd probably be governed more by their time schedule and
It's 4 months out for the fountain to be made,
Okay,
made in Ohio, I think. We've sent the first deposit, so it's been started, but,
I'm glad we're gonna approve it.
4 months out, so.
All right, and so. The only reason I'm asking is if you're putting it right by the library and you're gonna be digging right around that area. Does it make sense to dig it into the fall? Because then hopefully come spring, you actually don't notice anything if everything's kind of packed down in the fall and that.
Mhm.
Even if the fountain wasn't here on time, could we just do the hookup after the fact with the turnstile?
we can, I gotta check with my guys to see what the schedules are and before I can commit to you, sir.
Okay, no, it's just that I thought if there was any way that, you know, the ground grass and everything else could be back in place before spring.
Yep.
And it might look a lot better next year for the fountains.
We can give it a try with the coordinate, but you know, a plumber, we would coordinate to get the services back. in.
Yeah, it'll depend on the plumber too, because he also said that he's very busy, so. He said even in spring would be better, but I said, well, if we do it in even late fall, would that be an issue? And he said, no, that would be even better, so.
Okay. All those in favor? And motion carries. Council reports, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. So last county council meeting, we had a report there from the housing and homeless, in March, there was 103 people on the by name list of homeless, and 90 of them are chronic homeless people. That's up 6 from February. I think we have a report coming to our next county council meeting about homeless and about how we're going to handle out of the cold next year, I believe, so. That'll be there. Anyway, that's on the 12th, so anyway, I can update that. The roads department, they're setting up a new program more online, so say if you had if you know notice potholes or stuff like that on county roads, maybe a request for some traffic calming or something, you can do that all online now. So it just saves calling people, say it's working out well. Also from the roads department too, they were just give us an update on stop signs throughout here in county. They're switching a lot of them over to the 4-foot signs, just for visibility part. I think they said in here in county, there's 922 stop signs, I believe there is. So a lot of them, they're getting switched over to the 4-foot signs. There's a report there from economic development. The SLED money was given out to 16 projects throughout the county. Here in East, we got some money for a series of videos. Seaforth BIA got some money for continued beautification of the main street. And then Eggman House also got some money for their picnic shelter. So I think that was everything I had.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other boards, committees, meetings, or seminars that anybody want to comment? Okay, seeing none, are there any requests by members? Councilor Morrison.
I don't know if it's a request or more just a question. I've been asked once or twice about the Brussels Arena, the roof of it. People are just, I mean, I know there was that event that took place for the kind of the, not, I guess, soft opening or whatever you want to call it.
Donor appreciation.
Donor appreciation, but I guess I've had a couple questions, just kind of haven't seen a lot of work done and there's still a lot of material kind of sitting in the parking lot there. So just was there something that stopped the roof progress or just an update?
Brandon updated me, so I'll let him update you.
Yeah, so the process of making sure there's that, it goes back again to complexity of the previous building, how things were previously connected. Trying to ensure that what we're doing now will ensure that we won't have leaks in the future. So part of that was going through back and forth between what I'll call the contractor and the engineer, trying to figure out a solution that they felt that they were equally comfortable with work. So that's primarily at those transition points between the different rooms. That was part of it, and then the solution, and it's something, they call them chairs. I'm not a roofing guy, so they call them chairs. The chairs actually have to be adhered to the surface. And they have to use a special compound, and it has to be done in a special guess climatic conditions, so temperature, wetness, moisture, and of course, you know, we've had some pretty challenging weather in terms of duration to be able to kind of go and get at things. So all that work is finally done. I got an email actually today that it's all that prep work is done. So the easy part, which is putting the steel on, which is what everybody's seeing in Seaforth, it's just the steel up. It's not done, the steel's up. They still got to seam it, but it's a completely different roofing system. So different roofing systems, whole different plant. So that's the differences. So we should start seeing the steel go up in the near future. So once it starts going up, it just goes up. It goes up pretty easy.
Okay, sounds good. Deputy Mayor.
Yeah, just a couple of requests, or I was going to ask if we could have a report. One of the emails I got, that the IESO is talking about some possible wind turbines again. I just wondered, should we be looking back at that unwilling host motion that we passed years ago, and whether or not we should bring that up, or at least for discussion, but it was in the paper. I think one of the local, I think North Huron actually talked about that. So just wondered if we should look at that again, because we did pass a motion years ago, not that it did any good at that time because of green energy. But I wondered if it's worthwhile digging it out again and maybe just looking at it, see whether it would be any good or not. But when they're talking about that, I don't think it would hurt, so.
Yeah, go ahead.
Follow up to the question. I did, ISO reps were actually at my last workshop and I did have a conversation with them. And they had to present. So the difference between the Green Act, which was, you know, when wind farms kind of came to the municipality had no say. ISO is saying now that it's completely 100% municipalities can not choose to have any of these projects being done in their municipality. And so consent is an absolute. But it doesn't hurt, certainly, just to make those proponents know that we still don't want to be that. So certainly, I think we can look back at what was presented and bring that as a notice to motion at the next meeting.
I think it would be worthwhile, because we just never know with that, so I just think it would be worthwhile looking at it for sure. And if I may follow up with one more.
Go ahead.
We get a Brussels ambulance station update
Sure.
at some point in time.
Just a verbal one, I can probably give you a verbal one now.
Well, yeah, just, one of the firefighters had asked me about if I knew how it was coming along. I said, no, actually, we don't. So I didn't know, because I guess there's a fireman's breakfast coming up in a couple of weeks there too.
Okay.
And also they asked about the parking lot.
Okay. I can give you updates right now on those two.
Sure.
So the contractor, so Dom Construction's the contractor. So the when I met with them, probably about 3 weeks ago, it was, they were gonna be complete, they'd scheduled sort of by the end of June. So in terms of the firefighters breakfast, I don't think they'll be done the work. But we'll just have to work sort of in the areas that are available.
Sure.
So that's the timing in terms of completion. In terms of the parking lot, so the parking lot, I'd rather have Dom finish their parking lot, finish their project and get off the site. And then we're working in coordination with Public Works to try to do some of the parking lot expansion that's included in our capital budget. Do that as sort of an internal works, and then Barry will coordinate the asphalt with respect to some of the other paving projects that we're doing in the area.
Yeah. Okay. Well, no, that makes sense to do it like that. So no, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Wilkie.
I have a request. I would like a new computer. This is the second meeting I've sat through with no computer. So it works at home. And the password says it's correct, but it doesn't work here, so.
Tell you what, why don't you swap mine out with hers until we get it fixed?
Sounds good.
Okay. I'm good with that, because I can always keep bringing mine. We'll take care of that. Are there any notices of motion? Seeing none, are there any announcements at this time? Seeing none. Other business, bylaws. Can I get a mover and a seconder for bylaw 47? Councillor Deal, Councillor Wilby, that be it that be it hereby resolved that bylaw 47 of 2024, a bylaw to authorize the execution of the agreement for the purpose of leasing land for gravel extraction be given first, second, third, and final readings, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the seal of the corporation be affixed thereto. All those in favor? And motion carries. Mover and seconder for bylaw 48. Councillor Chartrand, Deputy Mayor, that be it hereby resolved that bylaw 48 of 2024, a bylaw to delegate authority for executing purchase and sale agreements for Huron East be given first, second, third, and final readings, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the seal of the corporation be affixed thereto. All those in favor? And motion carries. Mover and seconder for bylaw 49. Councillor Deal, Councillor Dalton, that be it hereby resolved that bylaw 49 of 2024, a bylaw to delegate authority for executing listing agreements and purchase and sales agreements for the Brussels subdivision be given first, second, third, and final readings, signed by the mayor and the clerk, and the seal of the corporation be affixed thereto. All those in favor? And motion carries. And I need a mover and a seconder to go into closed. Councillor Wilby, Councillor Morrison, that the closed meeting of council be held on Tuesday, June 4th, 2024 at 7:25 PM in the Town Hall Council Chambers in accordance with section 239 of the Municipal Act 2001 for the purposes of the following matters. Number one, adoption of the May 13th, 2024 closed session of administration committee meeting minutes. Number two, adoption of the May 21st, 2024 closed session council meeting minutes. And number three, under section 239, paragraph 2, subsection B, subsection D, personal matters about identifiable individuals and labor relations employee matters. And that CAO Brad McRoberts remain in the closed session. All those in favor? And